Services Manager at the Ames Public Library.
And I'm Ben. I'm a Youth Services Assistant at the Ames Public Library.
We are here to give you some recommendations for the third year of 12 to Try, and this is for July. You are well into your year. And here is another list of recommendations. As always, you can head up to the Adult Services area in the library and see a whole display of other recommendations. Ask any librarian. We'd be happy to give you ideas. But we're going to talk today a little bit about July's theme, which is characters in fiction books that are neurodivergent or might have a disability, highlighting some really interesting books and interesting characters today. Ben, do you want to start with one?
Sure. So I grabbed Show Me a Sign. So this is in our YA collection. We've used it in our Battle of the Books before. It's written by Clare LeZotte, a deaf author, which is, I think, an interesting sort of adds a layer to the book. There's some really interesting depictions of signing that I think is maybe more authentic. It's historical fiction. It takes place in Martha's Vineyard in the early 19th century. The main character is Mary Lambert, who is a deaf girl. This is a time and place that's really interesting from the history perspective. It's the place where Martha Vineyard Sign Language was being used. And it's a time when 1 in 3 residents of the island were deaf, and sign language was being actively used by both deaf and hearing alike. So it's a really interesting time and place. The story is also really interesting. It takes place at a time when a prejudiced scientist from the mainland comes over and wants to do research into this prevalence of deafness on the island, but he kind of is representing maybe a more limited point of view, and he thinks that all hearing impaired people are intellectually impaired, which is obviously incorrect.
Yep.
So a lot of good drama there, but also, as I said, a lot of interest to all ages of readers who are interested in some of the historical instances of Martha's Vineyard Sign Language, as we said, and sort of the time and place. Pretty unique stuff. And also, speaking to that time and place, I think one of the things the author does a really good job of is depicting some of the complicated relationships without really putting too rosy of a spin on it. I think there's a lot of tension between the English and the Wampanoag, as well as the Black and the Irish in the settlement. And the author said that she wanted that in there because, in her opinion, there isn't anyone who gets it right in this story, and that's on purpose to kind of remind us that even our loved ones and the loved ones of our main character remain flawed.
Yeah, that's great. I love that the author is deaf too, because I feel like that really adds a level of authenticity to the writing and stuff too. So jumping on that, I'm going to talk about our books were checked out. So here's the image of the book I'd like to talk about. It's called The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang. And same kind of thing. The author later in life discovered that she's neurodivergent and is on the autism spectrum disorder. And that really changed like her perception of her whole life growing up, is where she realized like where she was masking and where she had like figured out her own tools to manage life when she thinks and sees the world differently than other people. And she also loved romance books, so she decided to become a romance author. And so this is an adult book, The Kiss Quotient. It is kind of a contemporary romance book, and it follows Stella, who is very similar to her. She is very career-driven and very successful in her career, very statistical, economics kind of a job, but struggles socially in our world, has never really had big relationships and things like that, and intimate relationships and stuff like that, and so she decides she's gonna fix that. And you know, as all romance does, sometimes it's a little like out there and stuff, so she decides to hire a male escort with the intended purpose of teach me how to date, teach me how to kiss, teach me how to navigate the world of relationships and stuff like that. It's a very no-nonsense relationship kind of thing, but obviously they develop feelings for each other and a deeper relationship and stuff like that. But it is really fascinating because she too, in this process of self-discovery, discovers that she has Asperger's and is on the autism spectrum. And again, kind of similar to the author, realizes that a lot of her life and the support structure that she's had changes her perspective on how she's lived her life and stuff like that. So it feels very genuine, and it feels very like a little window for a neurotypical person to look into this world and be like, oh yeah, these are the things people are going to struggle with in a daily life and stuff like that. So it's a really great, if you like romance, it's a fabulous book. It's also the first in a series, and all of the characters are neurodivergent in some way. So it's really great to kind of have that perspective in a series of books, and then really well done.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Bree. The other book I brought is also features some neurodivergency. So this is Confessions of a Mango. So the main character in this book is neurodivergent in a couple different ways, and I hope I don't trip over my tongue here, but dyslexia, dyscalculia, and dysgraphia are things she suffers from, and she's a twin. So part of the hook of this book is she and her twin are heading to middle school. Their family are taking them to sort of like a magnet school, like a higher achieving school, to accommodate her twin's needs, because he's a really driven and achieving, but also a little shy. Whereas she herself is outgoing but neurodivergent and struggles a little bit more in the classroom. So long story short, they find that their academic lives are entwined because their family can't quite figure out how they can get them to two different schools. Yeah. So they're both attending the school together, even though their academic skills are very disparate. Yeah. And so she's really stressed out because she wants to succeed at the school for her brother's sake. Yeah. And she is processing a lot of the stress of being of masking, but also trying to fit in a high achieving school. And she sort of takes to social media and makes some anonymous posts. And the posts receive some support and then receive some backlash. And that's a lot of where the plot of the story comes. This book reads really well. It reads really fast. I really liked the main character right away. So it was a very clean read that way. And it has a lot of nice things to say about sort of an exploration of the virtues of intelligence and the virtues of bravery and how they intersect and how they don't necessarily intersect. The title is kind of a fun allusion to her social media handle, which she draws from her mother's favorite cartoon, which is a depiction of a tree full of lovebirds. And in the middle of all the lovebirds is one mango, because they sort of have similar coloration. And so that's her sort of guiding image, that she feels like a mango in a tree of lovebirds. And, whether you feel like a mango or a lovebird, this is a really good book.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, I have one more to talk about too, kind of along the same school lines a lot. But this one's called Out of My Mind by Sharon Draper. It's one of my favorites. I absolutely love it. We've used it for Battle of the Books for multiple years. It's on this year's list. But this is about Melody. She is the smartest person in her school. She has photographic memory. She sees something, she learns it, she knows it, and stuff like that. The problem is nobody knows it because she has cerebral palsy. She is nonverbal and uses a device to talk. So she is kind of trapped in her mind of, she's super smart, she's super witty, she's super engaged in what's going on around her, but there's this disconnect because she can't communicate that. And how do you communicate that intelligence and that wit and that banter and stuff like that when you're talking through a device? And so she learns to advocate for herself and get a new device that's upgraded and stuff like that. She joins the math club and is very smart and stuff like that. But most of the book is her trying to fit into a world that is not created for her type of communication and stuff like that. So the math group wins the championship and gets to go and travel to another place, and she gets left behind because of issues with travel and stuff like that. And everybody can relate to feeling left out and feeling not part of the group and not part of something that you've earned and feel like you're a part of. So it is a beautiful story of acceptance, of kind of coming of age, of advocating for yourself, and especially through this lens of the cerebral palsy and how communication really affects our everyday world. So We thank you. Those are a bunch of suggestions for this year. Like I said, if you want more, feel free to reach out to us at the library. We'd be happy to include more. And stay tuned for next month's suggestions.